Hello, everybody, and welcome to Right Here, Right Now, live Buffalo football talk presented by Forefathers Organics. I'm your host, Alex Brasky, here for the Batavia Daily and Livingston County News. Each week, we'll discuss Buffalo's favorite football team, along with all the comings and goings from Orchard Park, thanks to our friends at Forefathers Organics in Dansville.
Unlock the power of nature with Forefathers Organics, your premium CBD store. We offer the highest quality CBD and hemp products to liberate your mind, body, and soul, helping you live happy and free. Our mission is driven by excellence and transparency, using cutting-edge scientific methods to combat stress and target issues at their source. From potent ingestible CBD to soothing topicals, all our products are USDA certified organic. Discover all natural wellness from farm to table. Visit forefathersorganics.com for more information.
All right, getting ready for Bills-Broncos still here this week, this wild card week in the NFL. Before we get to my conversation with Ryan Talbot of Shout, a Buffalo football podcast, want to give some practice updates from One Bills Drive this afternoon. Bills are pretty healthy entering this game against the Broncos, and that spells good news for Buffalo, a team that has dealt with injuries entering the postseason the past few years. But entering this game, they are at relatively full strength. That is, aside from kick punt returner Brandon Codrington, who participated during the team's Thursday's practice, taking part in special teams work before exiting the field house with athletic trainers. He took 2 reps in terms of punt return reps, but he didn't field either one, just let both balls bounce inside the 10-yard line, probably as to not field the ball and have to make a move with it, continuing to rest that hamstring. I did see him jog in the field house, wasn't really sporting much of a limp. He did say he's feeling good, and it wasn't really a significant hamstring injury that he sustained against the Patriots. We talked to him after practice today. He said that hamstring injury occurred on his final return of the day against the Patriots. So it seems like he has a chance to play on Sunday, but with the nature of the injury, it being a hamstring injury, I'm not so sure that we'll see him out there this weekend. If we don't see Codrington against the Broncos, it's going to likely be KJ Hamler or Khalil Shakir fielding punts. Hamler and Shakir joined Codrington during practice as the team was going through punt return and punt coverage. Hamler did drop one of his opportunities. Shakir secured each one of his reps, so not a good sign for anybody who was hoping Hamler could assume those roles. I think they'll go with Shakir. He's the safe route. You don't want him to get injured because he means so much to you on the offensive side of the ball, but just having him back there as a safeguard, being able to catch those punts, keeping you out of bad situations with turnovers, I think that's the easy answer here, going with Khalil Shakir. But when it comes to kick returns, expect Ty Johnson and Ray Davis to share that role. Codrington did not receive a single kick return rep on Thursday. The only other player involved during kick return work was Hamler, but he didn't receive a kick, was just working kind of as the offside man as Ty Johnson and Ray Davis received those kicks. And that's something that makes me think that we won't see Codrington on Sunday, the fact we didn't even see him return any kicks. But like I said, he gave a fairly optimistic review of his injury after the practice, and we'll see how things transpire on Friday and then what he's tagged with going into the game. The only Bills player absent from Thursday's session was cornerback Jamarcus Ingram, who was excused for the second consecutive day due to personal reasons. That's not a good sign for Ingram, missing 2 straight days here. He's not a key piece of what they do offensively, but he is a key depth piece in terms of what they do, a good dime player and somebody who can really come up and stop the run as well. And he's filled in depth-wise for the Bills all season long. So somebody you want at your disposal if one of your top players are to go down. Linebacker Terrell Bernard, who head coach Sean McDermott said on Wednesday is good to go for Sunday's matchup. He was out there looking good on Thursday, along with Amari Cooper, who returned to the team after being excused from the trip to New England due to personal reasons. So the Bills very healthy entering this game and full participation at practice aside from Brandon Codrington. So We'll see how his injury, as I said, develops throughout the course of the week. So keep an eye on that. And I think you'll look to Khalil Shakir to fill the punt return duties if Codrington is not able to go. But without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Ryan Talbot of Shout, a Buffalo football podcast. Joined by Ryan Talbot of the Shout podcast, one of the two co-hosts of that podcast, Matt Perino. A little bit too busy this week to join us, Ryan, so we figured we'd bring in the better half of the podcast. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Not much news in terms of practice reports from the Bills this week, and I think that bodes well for Buffalo entering this matchup with the Broncos. Last year and the year before, missing some key pieces during the postseason. Entering the postseason, it seems like they're pretty much at full health, with the exception of Brandon Codrington, who we began this podcast discussing. How big of a deal do you think it is if he can't go in the return game? The Bills have one of the best starting field positions in the NFL on average, and the Broncos are right there as well. How big of a deal is it if Brandon Codrington can't go?
Yeah, I think it's a bigger deal than some people probably want to, give credit to, because of how good he has been this year. And it's not just flipping the field and the explosiveness on the punt returns, how close he's come to almost taking a few of them to the house and to the distance. It's the fact that you have someone back there that you trust with those Buffalo wins, and the fact that minus one muff very early on in the season, he's handled every, ball that has come his way well. And if you can't depend on him on Sunday, you have other guys on the main roster. You have some guys on the practice squad you could elevate. They have some experience returning punts, but it definitely changes things a little bit from the field position standpoint, but also, the turnover standpoint. The Bills have been very good about protecting the ball this year and the turnover differential. They need a guy like Codrington back there that they can trust to make sure that they can hold on to the ball.
Yeah, for sure. We saw a couple guys back there with Codrington today. We'll see how it all shakes out during the week. He was upgraded from a DNP to limited today, so seemingly trending in the right direction, but we'll see if he's out there on Sunday. The Bills are already at a disadvantage when it comes to special teams with Marvin Mims on the other side. Will Lutz, one of the best kickers in the league this season, so it would certainly hurt not to have Codrington this week. But let's look at big picture here, Ryan. This is a huge postseason for not only the Bills as a franchise, but specifically head coach Sean McDermott. The way that things have gone the past few years in the postseason, he got all the flowers in the world, leading the Bills back to the playoffs. They took the year off with Josh Allen's first year under center, and then to get back consistently has been a good thing in Buffalo. But the way that they've bowed out in the divisional round and some of the disastrous moments that they've had in the playoffs have really reeked on Sean McDermott's track record. But I think he could really change the tone of the conversation centered around his leadership with the Super Bowl appearance this year, much less a Super Bowl victory. And I think that would put him in the upper echelon in terms of top-tier coaches in the not only Bills fans' eyes, but the public eye as well. I think he deserves a lot of credit for what the Bills have done this season. A lot of it has been heaped on Allen and offensive coordinator Joe Brady. But I guess my question to you, how much credit do you give McDermott for the transitional phase that they've kind of eased into this season? And what are the ramifications of another divisional round defeat for the Bills? I know that's looking ahead from the wild card round. That's not even mentioning if they are to lose to the Broncos this weekend.
Right. So regular season, he deserves a ton of credit. One, for the record, this was supposed to be a reset year. You win 13 games. Had it not been a meaningless game in week 18, you probably win that one too. And you set a new benchmark for wins in a season at 14. So you look at it from that perspective. He deserves a ton of credit being the head man. The fact that he was willing this season to kind of truly take on the head coaching role, where I felt like last year, despite the defense playing very well under his watch, he was wearing too many hats, calling the plays, and that took your attention away from the offense, the special teams, and special teams has kind of been a big thing to him for many years since he's been in Buffalo. So to give off, Babbage as the play caller on defense, to trust Joe Brady, that alone just makes him earn a ton of credit in my book, because it's not easy for a head coach to hand over the reins, especially when you're a defensive-minded guy. He could always, I'm sure throughout the week, he's doing a lot of the game planning with Babbage, obviously. But he knows that at this point, you need to be able to develop guys as coaches, just like you develop players over the course of years where, Babbage might take some lumps. He took some lumps late in the season. Yes, injuries played a part of that, but the Bills defense gave up a lot of points in a few games, and they've been struggling a little bit on third down. But McDermott himself, yes, he should be up there in terms of the credit that he receives. But for the playoffs, this is where he really needs to change a lot about who he is as a coach, or change, I guess, the story that is in a lot of people's minds. Because last year, I felt like he was very aggressive in the regular season, fourth down, going for it in certain spots. But when the playoffs come, he just kind of seems to back off of that a little bit and plays a little bit too conservatively. And when you have Josh Allen and you're around midfield, I think you should be willing to go for it more times than not. You have to look at the situation, the score, the time, and everything else. But, I want to see that aggressiveness from him this year as a head coach. You got to avoid the blunders, the time management. That's been a big issue. The burnt timeouts, the wasted timeouts. Sometimes it's the bad replays. I think the Bills have been much better on replays this year. Bringing in Perry has helped in that area quite a bit. So there's a lot of weaknesses that he's had in his, coaching career. I do respect the fact that he's addressed that, like bringing in Perry for the right. Challenges where that's never been a strong suit. And you look at the 13 seconds, you would hope that something like that never happens again. But what can you learn from it in that moment? Could have been a squib kick. You could have held intentionally on defense, taken the 5 yards and the time that came off the clock. So now he's at this point where, like you said, if he can make a deep run, if he can get the Bills to the Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl, everything about Sean McDermott and the story about him as a coach changes. It's no longer he's holding this team back. He's the reason they haven't won one yet. Now you look at it and you say, okay, this is the guy that changed the culture here, and he did more with less this season. Yes, you have Josh Allen, who's probably going to win the MVP, but there wasn't as much talent on offense around him in the wide receiver room. And, the defense has some issues for sure going into the playoffs, yet this team is right there in the mix to be a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, while he hasn't pushed all the right buttons during his career, I think one thing you have to give Sean McDermott credit for is he's tried his best to evolve as a head coach. If you look at back when he started his career in Buffalo to where he is now, just all the changes he's made. And I think one of the distinct changes he's made this year, or Ty Dunn alluded to it in his most recent article profiling the Bills head coach. He's tried to convince his team or make his team feel like they're going to win in those clutch situations. And I think in the past they've been a little bit too uptight. And I think that starts with the head coach, like you said, becoming less aggressive in those situations and really tightening up, as I said. Loosen up the way that we've seen him this season, doing the snow angels, joking with the media seemingly on a regular basis, and even going as far as to be outspoken in terms of Josh Allen's MVP candidacy. I think those are all things that we really haven't seen from him in the past. He's been much more reserved in that regard, and I think you have to give him credit for that evolution. But as you said, it's all going to come down to the wins and losses. If they bow out this week against the Broncos, it's going to be not even back to square one. It's going to be really feet to the fire in that situation. And then if they advance to the divisional round and they're unable to advance to that conference championship once again, and I was speaking to a few colleagues at the stadium today, if they lose that game to the Ravens, that will make it you've lost to the Bengals, the Chiefs, and the Ravens in that divisional round. And that places you a clear-cut number 4 in terms of the top 4 quarterbacks in the AFC. And that's going to cause a lot of disruption amongst the fan base this offseason. But in addition to Allen and McDermott, Brandon Beane, another one who has done a phenomenal job putting the pieces together this offseason, standing pat at safety, the way that he's maneuvered the wide receiver position without making any seismic moves, and the O-line shift as well. That seems to have worked wonders for him. It's been a seamless transition, and perhaps one that has made this team even better, and Beane also has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, 100%. When you have a ton of cap space and draft picks, it's easy to make the right calls. When you're starting to deal with what the Bills are dealing with now and what we saw this offseason where the cap gets a little bit tight, and you take on, the dead cap with the Stephon Diggs trade. Your draft picks are now in the late 20s to 30s every year. That's when you find out who really is a really good GM in this league. And Brandon Beane certainly is, because he's managing the cap very well. He knows, what levers to push in terms of restructures, who to let go. You can look at the guys that the Bills moved on from at the end of last season without blinking an eye. And he really didn't miss there. Jordan Poyer, the leadership, I'm sure, was missed, but you saw that he had, slowed down a little bit. He's lost a step. And it wasn't just Poyer. Trey White, you saw how it went for him with the Rams. He's done better with the Ravens since getting moved over there. But a lot of the guys that he moved on from that had, a big salary for Trey White when he was healthy. He obviously had earned that. Jordan Poyer at the end of the rope. So you need to know when to move on from guys, when to stay with players. Mitch Morse had to be a tough decision because of how beloved he was in the locker room, how good of a player he still was too. But to have the confidence in saying, all right, we're going to move Connor McGovern over. We're going to put David Edwards in, who was at that point their jumbo lineman. And to have the faith that you have another, that line's going to gel. You're going to have someone else that can take over the jumbo role. The O-line's never been better. That looks like a genius move. Like you said, no huge moves in the wide receiver room. Yes, he traded for Amari Cooper, but it didn't take much because of the salary, so he didn't have to bring anything on. It wouldn't shock me if they were able to re-sign him in the offseason. So he's making a lot of the right moves. And, the Bills can move a lot of things around this offseason and create some salary cap. It's not a very strong free agency class looking ahead to the offseason, but I'm sure he's going to be able to fill in some of those gaps where, whether it's the draft or free agency, you might say, okay, they finally do need a big one tech. They need someone that can stop that run, or maybe they need to bring in another cornerback because Russell Douglas didn't look anywhere close to the same this season he did last year, and Benford's the real deal, but who can we play opposite him? He's going to be able to find guys, whether it's draft or free agency, and find those fits based on his track record here in Buffalo.
And moving past the personnel, one last big picture question. You seem like you're still knee deep in Bills Mafia. A lot of friends still left over from your time being a fan before you got on the beat. Same with me. We've both been a bit removed, but it's hard to fully remove yourself being from Buffalo and what you've been through as a fan, and your family going through it. And like I said, your friends. From your perspective, what would this championship mean to this fan base? Obviously, it goes without saying in a sense, but can you put into words, going from where you've been as a fan, now covering the team professionally, just what would it mean to the city, the fan base overall, if they are able to satisfy those high expectations that they've really altered throughout the course of this season?
Yeah, I don't know if you can put it into words, because like you said, we grew up in this area. We grew up Bills fans. My grandparents never got to see, them win a Super Bowl. My parents have been waiting for a moment like that. It's my brother, my, friends, family, etc. And they came close in that run in the 90s, obviously, which we all remember. And then you have that drought. This fan base is just dying for a Super Bowl win. And you could say the same for a Super Bowl win or a Stanley Cup victory. And it's no knock on the Bandits, because they've had their success. They've won. It's just not the same. The fans here have been waiting so long that if the Bills can finally deliver that, I'd be excited and maybe somewhat terrified to see what the parade would look like after the Super Bowl is over, in terms of, how the fans would react to finally winning that big one. I would love to be there, and I can't, wait for that day if and when it comes. But you can't even put it into words, because this fan base was so loyal, so supportive. There were the drought years. There were the years where there was the uncertainty about Buffalo keeping the team, and they always showed up and showed out. It's just one of those fan bases where I really hope, and if it's not Buffalo's year, for instance, I hope it's Detroit's year. They're just like Buffalo. They've been waiting for that in terms of the NFL for so long that you want to see one of those franchises finally do it, because the fans have been so loyal, and that's their payoff.
Yeah, if we see a Lions-Bills Super Bowl, I think the NFL world might just spontaneously combust. I'm not sure if that's even something that's possible in this football world that we live in, but boy, that would be a sight to see. Before we get out of here, Ryan, keys to victory against the Broncos. Is it all about slowing this pass rush? 4 players with 7 sacks or more. Nick Bonito has been fantastic for them all season long, but they really come at you in waves. Is it all about slowing that pass rush, or do they have some things to worry about offensively? I know they really rely on that defense to set up their offense, but Bo Nix has been coming along as the season's gone along.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the point you brought up has to be up there, but the one thing I'll say is the Bills' O-line has been great in terms of pass protection, and you have Josh Allen, the ultimate sack eraser. He just doesn't take sacks, and he finds ways to elude them. Even if a guy's coming, it looks like right at him, he finds a way to get around that first player and make something happen. So while that is certainly a factor, or maybe the Broncos have that key and they have the way to finally do it, yes. But it's also on Buffalo's defense. It's up to them to get off the field on third down. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a really interesting matchup, maybe my biggest key to the game, because the Bills have been one of the worst teams down the stretch in third down defense, 4th worst in the league, I believe, or maybe they're 3rd worst in the league, where you look at
particularly 3rd and longs.
Yeah. Which always just baffles you. And then you look at Denver, though. Denver is right up there high in the league on offense in terms of the most 3-and-outs in the league. So something has to give in that battle. I know Bo Nix in the offense has been better. Obviously, the competition has to play a part of that, some of the teams that they've played down the stretch. But if you can force some 3-and-outs on defense, the way this offense can put up points, I think it can make Denver one-dimensional sooner rather than later, which plays right into Buffalo's hand.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting matchups like you just brought up right there, either good on good or bad on bad. You look at the pass rush against the Bills' offensive line. You look at the Broncos' running game, which is subpar, against the Bills' run defense, which has been subpar at times. So it's going to be an interesting matchup this weekend for sure. Interesting to see how it shakes out. One thing for sure, it's going to be freezing even inside that press box at Highmark Stadium. But last question to you, Ryan. What's something that no one's talking about that you think is critical for the Bills this postseason if they hope to win that Super Bowl? There's a lot of obvious factors that are going to play in. Will the Bills pass rush come alive? Will Josh Allen continue to play the way that he is? What's something that is under the radar in your mind that you think the Bills need to maybe bring to the forefront a bit more in order to take home that Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think the factors you brought up have been mentioned. The special teams and the worry about Tyler Bass has certainly been mentioned. I think for me, it really does come down to this defense has to find the traditional ways to get off the field. They have been so dependent on creating turnovers where, yes, it worked this year. They led the league in turnover differential. It led to the Bills, or helping the Bills win 13 games. Come playoff time, turnovers are going to be much harder to come by. They're going to have to really step up their game in terms of the 3-and-outs, the forcing punts, because if you're going to let teams go up and down the field on you and just hope for a turnover or the bend but not break, it's going to put the Bills in a little bit of a bind. So for me, if they're going to win a Super Bowl this year, the defense really needs to ramp up their play. You can look at the linebackers maybe being healthy and together and maybe, shaking that rust off if you're Matt Milano, Bernard coming back. Maybe that helps out a little bit there where they've had a lot of missing pieces this season and now it's all coming together.
All right. Excuse me, I got a little tickle in my throat there. You got a live show coming up Saturday, Ryan. Why don't you plug that while I clear my throat?
Yeah, absolutely. Live show at Wingnuts on Saturday night. The event starts at 6, runs through 10 p.m. We'll podcast around 7. We'll preview the Bills and Broncos matchup. We'll have some great wings, some great beers. We'll bring fans on for a question segment. Always a great time at Wingnuts. And then I'll be right there with you in the press box on Sunday. I'm packing a sweater. No more dress shirts for this guy. Too cold up there. Sweater weather on Sunday for sure.
Yeah, good thing my partner in the press box, my neighbor, I should say, Mookie Hawkins, is I got a tear in my eye from this tickle in my throat. I'm not getting choked up about football talk, Ryan, I promise. Mookie brings a space heater sometimes. It makes him probably the best neighbor to have in the press box. And he's not someone who really gets that cold, so he lets me really have full use of it. So we'll see you on Sunday, Ryan. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
All right. Big thank you to Ryan Talbot of Shout, a Buffalo football podcast, for joining us and discussing some big picture topics. Also looking ahead to Bills-Broncos on Sunday. And I'll leave you with this. The final question I asked Ryan, what's something that not enough people are talking about entering this game that I think that the Bills are going to have to do, not only to win this game, but if they hope to go on a run to a Super Bowl? And I think it's Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano climbing the ladder and returning to that form that everybody expected entering this season. With the season that Terrell Bernard had a season ago, and albeit with Matt Milano on the mend, you were really looking forward to those two getting together and joining forces at the second level of the Bills defense. And that didn't transpire until late in the season. And it hasn't been as productive as a year for Terrell Bernard this year as it was the past season. And it also seems as if Matt Milano has lost a step due to all the injuries that he sustained over the past few years. But I think in order for the Bills to go on a run here, they need that second level of the defense, their linebackers, to become one of the strengths of this defense, a defense that has struggled at times this season. Ryan mentioned it, getting off the field on third down. And I think a lot of that comes down to communication, as something that Nate Geary, who joined us on Wednesday, mentioned. But it also just comes down to your linebackers making plays. I think Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard need to have a big performance, not only this weekend, but moving forward into the postseason if the Bills hope to walk away with a Super Bowl title. But I want to thank again Ryan for joining us, and thank you for listening. And we will see you after a quick word from our sponsor, Forefathers Organics in Dansville.
Unlock the power of nature with Forefathers Organics, your premium CBD store. We offer the highest quality CBD and hemp products to liberate your mind, body, and soul, helping you live happy and free. Our mission is driven by excellence and transparency, using cutting-edge scientific methods to combat stress and target issues at their source. From potent ingestible CBD to soothing topicals, all our products are USDA certified organic. Discover all natural wellness from farm to table. Visit forefathersorganics.com for more information.
Yes, Thigh Doctor, we are live. I'm not sure why we're asking that question, but back to AJ's comment when Ryan was on. Love the hoodie. Ryan was wearing a Notre Dame hoodie, rooting for the Irish tonight against my Penn State Nittany Lions. I'm kind of a half-hearted Penn State football fan, so let's go Nittany Lions over the Irish tonight. I think you can take Nittany Lions money line and be happy with it. And you'll see them come college football playoff final time. But thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.